Hey there, everybody! Andy here from Legendary Tales, and welcome back to Tales of Legend, a tabletop role-playing game for your worlds, your heroes, and your stories. On this episode of How to Play, we're going to talk about the actions in Tales of Legend. This includes not only the 10 different actions you can take in combat, but we will also discuss the different free actions, as well as how trigger actions work. Thanks for joining in. Now let's begin. In Tales of Legend, the action economy is the limiting factor and resource to managing combat scenarios. When you begin at level 1, you only have 2 action points. This changes to 3 action points at level 2, which is a massive boost in both power and option. And this slowly progresses until you eventually have 6 action points at level 13. You expend your action points by taking an action. It takes at least 1 action point to take an action. However, multiple action points can be expended in order to take 1 action. This is especially true in the case of inflicting status effects or casting higher rank spells. And the higher your level, the more resources you have to interact with these mechanics. We have 10 basic actions in Tales of Legend. Most all of the mechanics, bonuses, and effects interact through one of these 10 actions. Because of this, Tales of Legend is designed that, with time, you will be able to memorize these actions fairly quickly and reference the rules less. Let's go over these 10 actions. As a reminder before we get started, you are ordinarily only allowed to take 2 of the same action per turn. First, we have the move action. When you expend an action point on this, you can move up to your movement speed in any direction. You can even stop moving, take other actions, and then continue to move based on your movement speed. If you expend 2 action points on movement, you are considered sprinting and can take your full movement twice. If you have other special movements, such as a fly or climb speed, you can freely switch to those speeds during your move action. However, the amount of distance you travel with that action cannot exceed the total of your fastest movement option. For example, let's say that I have a walking speed of 25, as well as a flying speed of 50. I expend a move action and run forward 25 feet. I can then use my flying speed, but the amount of speed I can move is only another 25 feet, as that is the total movement of my fastest movement option. Now, the move action is likely going to be one of the most common actions your heroes and creatures will take in a combat scenario. The next most common action is the attack action. When you expend an action point to take the attack action, you make an accuracy roll against a creature within range of your weapon. Melee weapons can typically only strike out at creatures within 5 feet of them, while ranged weapons and melee weapons that are thrown have a maximum distance they can attack with. If a creature makes a ranged or thrown weapon attack outside of the maximum range listed on the weapon, it will automatically miss. If you connect with a weapon attack, you can often expend an additional action point to attempt to inflict a status effect. Now, a common question I am asked is this: why would I spend another action point to maybe inflict a status effect when I can just make another attack and deal more damage? I hear you. There might be situational cases where the status effect could be more advantageous, but in general, players want to deal more damage. But remember, you can only attack twice in the same turn. So when you start fighting with 3, 4, 5, or even 6 action points per turn, and you can only attack twice, you will want other offensive options for those action points. Speaking of more uncommon ways you might want to use your action points when you have more of them to burn, next we have the guard action. This defensive action makes it so the next source of damage to your resolve is halved until your next turn. For every point you expend on the guard action, you can have another instance of damage. Also, if you use all of your action points to guard, you will have every instance of damage you take for that round. An excellent option when you know you're about to be focused. Next, we have the maneuver action. Taking this action gives you a lot of benefits. The idea is that you are concentrating on moving out of harm's way. You can't provoke openings for the rest of the round. Your actions cannot provoke trigger actions. You are immune to the effects of hampering terrain, and you have the ability to move through a foe's space at the cost of 10 feet of movement instead of 5. The most important aspect of this action is when you want to make sure that, whatever you are about to do, a foe cannot use your upcoming action to initiate a trigger action. This is one of the most tactical actions in Tales of Legend. We now have the use action. Fairly simple. If you have an item, such as an elixir that you want to use, either on yourself or another creature, you can use it. Similarly, the skill action allows for you to use an aspect roll during combat, such as pushing a boulder or trying to detect the presence of an invisible creature. Neither of these actions nor the maneuver action prior have a way to expend additional action points on their action. The assist action allows you to help an ally within 5 feet of you. By expending 1 action point to aid them, their next accuracy or aspect roll gets to add their aptitude die to the roll. If they would already add their aptitude die, they will maximize it instead. If your ally really needs to accomplish their next action for the good of the scenario, it is a good idea to aid them in that action. And this is a fantastic action to take at higher levels if you have action points to spare. The recover action is used to attempt to remove a status effect from yourself. This action is a bit Legend Master dependent, but for example, unless you are stuck or helpless, you can always use the recover action to stand up from being fallen. Other commonly recoverable status effects are afflicted, agony, helpless, and provoked. The Legend Master might require a roll for the recovery to be a success. For example, maybe you want to break out of a spider's web. That can be either a skill action using physicality or a recover action where the Legend Master asks for a physicality roll to see if you successfully break the bonds of the web. The magic action can only be taken if your hero or creature has the ability to use magic, typically via having the magic source or magic trick bonuses from the focus list. When casting a spell option, you can add additional action points to the spell to increase its rank, causing it to be able to accomplish more. It is important to note that if you use the magic action to cast the magic attack spell option, it also counts as an attack action as well as a magic action. Why? Because it would be an easy way for mixed spellcaster and martial characters to take 4 attacks in a single turn at higher levels. They could take the attack action twice and then take the magic action twice to cast magic attack. That would be pretty unbalanced with the rule set, so keep that little ruling in mind. Finally, exert is a very tactical action that a hero might take in their desperation. By using it, you expend 1 action point, but gain 2 action points. Functionally, this allows you to have 1 turn where you have 1 extra action point than you otherwise would. The side effect is that you will gain the winded status effect after. There is not a limit to the number of times you can take the exert action. However, there is also not a limit to the number of applications of the winded status you can accumulate. So in general, the exert action should be something to keep in mind when needed, rather than something you should be considering at all times. Now, not all of these actions are as common as others, especially at lower levels. I've had players that have had successful tales entirely relying on the movement, attack, and magic actions. The combat doesn't have to be more complex than you want in Tales of Legend. Also, as a note to the Legend Masters, although I don't recommend it unless you have very skilled players, you do have the option of all 10 of these actions with creatures as well. I remember the first time I used the exert action with a dying boss in a very dire scenario to temporarily escape my heroes. It was dramatic. But I wouldn't constantly spam that action in every scenario unless you want a frustrated group of players. Now, we also want to take a quick look at the free actions and trigger actions. Unlike your action points, you only get 1 free action per turn, and that does not change, unless you add more with specific bonuses. Free actions are quick, incidental actions that you can take alongside your normal actions that may or may not have a large impact on play, considering the circumstance. Do not feel the need to come up with a free action every single turn, but in cases where you can save an action point to do something minor, it is an excellent thing to keep in mind. Here are the list of standardized free actions that can be commonly taken. First, we have Communicate. Yes, we actually have a rule for game masters who find it frustrating that heroes have long, in-depth conversations in the middle of a 6-second round. When you use your free action to communicate, you can call out to your allies or foes, relaying quick information that otherwise they might not know, or attempting to intimidate, deceive, or negotiate with someone you were fighting. Remember though, you gotta keep it within 6 seconds. Next we have environment. Whether you are opening a door, kicking over a table, or flipping a switch, if you are quickly interacting with the world around you, you don't have to expend an action point to accomplish that, as long as it is something that can be done reasonably quickly. Now there are times when you might want to fall to the ground. Hiding, dodging arrow fire, crawling through a vent. Regardless, you don't have to spend an action to flop on the ground. Grab means that you swap out the items you are holding. Want to drop your sword and pull out your bow? That can be a free action. When you hop, you are quickly changing elevation. Maybe you are hopping on top of a table, jumping over a dead body, or falling 5 to 10 feet off a ledge. That's fast. No action required. Now, Magic Tap is one of the more important free actions. In Tales of Legend, in order to cast spells, you must first tap into your magical source. This is a free action. After you tap, you can cast spells for typically up to 1 minute. We will actually discuss spells in our next video, but this one is important if you want to use spellcasting. The strike free action can only be taken in very few specific circumstances. However, this is what you want to use when fighting with 2 melee weapons. You attack with one weapon and strike with the other. This is a very powerful way to use your free action every turn to deal more damage if you were built this way. In wrestling, you are often holding on to another creature, inflicting the hampered, stuck, or helpless status to them. Letting them go is as simple as using your free action to release. Similarly, if you are sustaining a continuous spell effect and want to end it, you can release spell to end the effect as a free action. And finally, we have possibly the most common free action of all in step. When you step, you can move 5 feet or 1 square without expending an action point on the move action. You'd be surprised how often you will find yourself in a position where you just needed a little more movement. Okay, lastly, I do want to cover what trigger actions are in Tales of Legend. This is one of the more tactical mechanics in the game. Please don't feel pressured to incorporate this into your battle strategy immediately, but once you get comfortable with it, it will keep you engaged in combat long after your turn. At any point, when a creature other than yourself declares an action, you can declare a trigger action. Select an action you would like to take that resolves before the creature's declared action. Once your trigger action is resolved, that creature has a choice to continue with the action they were going to or change their action. The trick to trigger actions, however, is that it still costs an action point to declare one. This means that, for you to safely declare a trigger action, you need to end your turn without expending one of your action points. But if you do, you have the ability to catch your foes off guard later in the round. Examples would be taking a shot when a foe runs from cover to cover, taking the guard action right when an attack would drop you to 0 resolve, or quickly casting a defensive spell to save an ally. Now, it is possible to take a trigger action even when you don't have an action point to spare. However, once you do, you gain the winded status effect. It is also important to know that a hero with at least one application of winded can no longer take trigger actions, so only do this if it is a matter of desperation. And that does it for the different actions in Tales of Legend. Thanks so much for watching this video. I'm sure many of you tactical players are already thinking of ways you can leverage these options dynamically. If so, I would love to see it in action. Come join us on our Discord server listed below. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to check out all the free goodies at legendarytalesrpg.com. I'm currently working on 2 videos coming up. Our next video in the How to Play series is going to be on spellcasting. Also, I will be starting a new series soon called Let's Build a Hero, where I will be making a bunch of different archetypes of fantasy heroes using the Tales of Legend system. So keep an eye out for that. I hope to see you all in the next video. Have a wonderful day, everybody.